Now, they're going to try and hide it. They're going to call it a levy, or they're going to call it a contribution, or they're going to call it income insurance. But you all know the saying, if it looks like a duck, if it swims like a duck, and if it quacks like a duck, then it probably is a duck.
Those of that opinion will say aye.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move that all the words after that be deleted and they be replaced with "This House has no confidence in this government that returns to Wellington."
Order. A point of order.
Mr. Speaker, I regret to advise the House that once the Speaker has put a vote, there's no further debate on it.
I haven't completed putting it.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move that all the words after that be deleted and are replaced with "This House has no confidence in this government that returns to Wellington at the start of each year with more promises it has no intention of keeping and fails to deliver." Mr. Speaker, before I begin, can I just wish you and all my colleagues here a happy new year. I trust you've all had a good break. It's good that everyone is back rearing to go. I can tell you the National Party is ready. Mr. Speaker, Kiwis are tired. They're tired of this government that's addicted to spending and are consistently failing to get things done. And after 4 years of stagnation and failure, they're tired of being let down by a government that has turned out to be what? All spin and no delivery. This government has never met a problem it didn't think it could solve with just a little bit more government, a little bit more Wellington, a little bit more centralisation, a comms plan, more bureaucracy and less input from affected communities. They're tired of a government that's clearly out of ideas, out of energy, out of steam, and in less than 2 years, frankly, will be out of office. Because I can tell you the people of New Zealand can see what an absolute mess this Labor government is making of things. They see through it. They can see that Labor has doubled our country's debt and they've set government spending on a completely unsustainable long-term path. They can see that all that spending, all that borrowing isn't actually getting results. And it's not delivering the long-term solutions to our challenges or improving people's daily lives, and it's actually not getting things done. This government confuses activity with achievement. This government confuses words with action, and they are two very, very different concepts. And now here we are with an overheated economy, and they can see it's clearly making things worse. It's pushing up prices, it's pushing out the private sector, and it's squeezing everyday New Zealanders. Now, Mr. Speaker, Kiwis' ability to be able to get ahead and to enjoy a higher quality of life depends on the size of our economic engine, and it needs some serious upgrading if we're to go forward together well. We're suffering in this country from what is a productivity disease. The average Kiwi's working for an hour to earn what the average Australian earns in 44 minutes. Now, Grant Robertson, when he was in opposition, used to talk endlessly about productivity per capita metrics. But he doesn't do it anymore, and he doesn't do it anymore because he fundamentally doesn't care about small business people. The only economic tools he's been able to use is to spend more of Kiwis' money, with government spending now up a staggering 68% since they came to power. And that spending is driving a massive increase into the cost of living, which is now running at a 30-year high of almost 6%. We have a cost of living crisis in this country. And I'm hearing it when we go around the country. I'm sure many of the MPs in this House are hearing it as well. And it doesn't matter whether there's frustration around a block of cheese costing $15 to $16 or unsustainable levels of rent that are becoming so unaffordable to everyday Kiwis. They are feeling the pain of this government's economic mismanagement. And you've got to ask yourself just one question. Are you better off under this government than you were 12 months ago? Are you better off than you were 4 years ago? And I can tell you right now the answer is an absolutely categorical no. Under this Labor government, people are working harder, they're not getting ahead, and they're going backwards. Everyone knows it, everyone feels it, even Grant Robertson knows it, he feels it, he knows it's true as well. That's the reality. And sadly, that's what you get with a government that is focused on making announcements, on spin, and not actually on getting results. That's what you get. Spin over substance, you get activity over achievement, you get a so-called year of delivery that delivered little more than press releases, you get the year of the vaccine that somehow delivered the slowest vaccine rollout in the developed world, resulting in a 15-week lockdown at $8 billion. You get a government that banned rapid antigen tests, then changed its mind, and then decided to confiscate them from the good proactive businesses who were just trying to keep their own workers safe. And Mr. Speaker, you get a Prime Minister who promised to make housing more affordable, but instead she's delivered the largest, the fastest increase in house prices in our nation's history. The average house price is now over $1 million. And in just 4 years of Labor mismanagement, we've seen house prices rise by a staggering $380,000. And it's a truly shocking result of government incompetence. Now, Labor are pushing the dream of Kiwi home ownership away from a whole generation of young New Zealanders. And I can tell you, rapidly rising interest rates are only going to make things much, much worse. Weekly rents are up $125 since 2017. That's making it harder for Kiwis to pay the bills, let alone a chance to be able to save up for a deposit. And just think about that. That's a Kiwi renting who has to go find $6,500 after tax in a year to rent the same house that they were renting just 4 years ago. You've got almost 25,000 people languishing on the state waiting list for a state house. That's a fourfold increase in 4 years. That's unbelievable. It's unbelievable. There's 4,500 children living in motels, sharing unsuitable accommodation with violent gang members and drug dealers, all at a cost of about $1.2 million a day. And so, Mr. Speaker, it is an absolute moral failure, and it is an indictment on a government that promised to solve the housing crisis but has made it so much worse. And this from a Prime Minister who promised to build 100,000 Kiwi-built houses in 10 years. But here we are, we're 4 years in, and how many more do we have to go? Another 98,000 houses to go. Prime Minister promised big on state housing, but over the past 6 months, we've seen the state landlord remove homes that it's built. That's right, they've taken away more houses than they've built in the last 6 months. Now, Mr. Speaker, nowhere has the Prime Minister promised more and delivered less than in transport. Now, one of the first promises she made was that she'd send a tram from downtown Auckland to Mount Roskill. It would cost less than $2 billion, and it would have been completed by the end of last year. Well, here we are, we're 4 years in, and the only thing that's been delivered is a brand new spanking price tag of $15 billion. And if you're depending on which officials you want to listen to, it could be up to $24 billion. And then you've got a promise of a decade of disruption in Auckland. And I reckon for all of that, the government could actually go out and buy each of the team of 5 million people a brand new state-of-the-art Swish e-bike. And they'd still have billions of dollars left to invest in heavy rail. They'd still have money left to invest in upgrading ferries. They'd still have money to invest in dedicated busways and improving maintenance and safety on our highways. But that's the sort of sensible projects that are actually about helping people and businesses connect and do business around our towns and cities. And that's not what Labor politicians are about. It's about a legacy or trying to impress Twitter followers. Now, Mr. Speaker, at the last election, voters were also promised no new taxes. But when you have a 68% increase in government spending, when you have a doubling of the debt in this country, which has to be repaid, forget about what modern monetary theorists say, it has to be repaid, and when it does, that will mean that we don't have the cash to invest in better public services or productivity enhancing intergenerational infrastructure. You just know, in your bones that Labor is going to increase your taxes. No doubt about it. It's coming. And because Labor can't manage money, they'll come after yours. Labor broke that election promise of no new taxes in pretty quick time. What we saw was a ramming through of a stealth capital gains tax. That was quickly followed by the infamous ute tax. And if that wasn't enough, Grant Robertson has now cooked up another brand new tax. This time he wants to slap it on every single worker and every single business in New Zealand. And would you believe it? The Labor Party wants to roll out a jobs tax. Now, they're going to call it a levy, or they're going to call it a contribution, or they're going to call it income insurance. But you all know the saying, if it looks like a duck, if it swims like a duck, and if it quacks like a duck, then it probably is a duck. And I can tell you, this is a tax. This is a tax. Not a mallard. Making Kiwis pay an extra tax at a time when Kiwis need that cash in their own pockets as they navigate a cost of living crisis when they're buying stuff that's going up twice as fast as their wages. That's what they really need. They need the money back in their pockets, not going to Grant Robertson through another tax. They're living in a cost of living crisis, but it doesn't seem that this government cares or even understands the reality of that for people. Now, with Mr. Speaker, what we didn't hear much about from the Prime Minister today was what's happening with the Three Waters reforms. Now, I can tell you, Nanaia Mahuta, she made up her decision on day one. She locked in on a model. She's gone through a sham consultation process with local government. And despite saying it would be voluntary, lo and behold, it's now been compulsorily acquiring the assets from ratepayers and citizens who've spent decades paying for them. And I can tell you the costs are unrealistic, the scale benefits aren't there, there's massive cross-subsidisation between districts, and most importantly, it's got a convoluted co-governance and management structure that essentially is like a set of Russian dolls that launders the asset out of the control of ratepayers and citizens and local government through a process to end up in the government's hands. But I wouldn't be too worried about it because I can tell you what I think is going to happen. I can tell you what's going to happen. Grant Robertson is worried, right? He's been studying those polls over summer. He's been looking into the numbers. And in the same way he went and killed off Michael Wood's lovely $785 million walking and cycling bridge, in the same way that he's pushed and cajoled and argued with the Prime Minister about finally opening the joint up, he's going to come in and he's going to squash these reforms too. I bet you that's what's going to happen. You mark my words, these Three Water reforms are absolutely finished, and I predict that we're going to have a new local government minister very, very shortly too. Either way, watch this space. A big back down is coming your way. But, Mr. Speaker, I've made it clear that our job as a National Party over the next 20 months is not just to hold this government to account, to oppose them, and all their failure to deliver, of which there's just endless opportunities, but we are here to propose. We're here to propose an alternative vision of this country. And so that come the next election, the New Zealand people will be able to see a national government in waiting, ready to go. Now, we've already proposed some pretty sensible upgrades to our COVID management plan, and as we navigate our way through Omicron and out of these endless restrictions, we've been doing the same. And, Mr. Speaker, usually what happens is they like to rubbish our ideas, and then they go back and then they pick them up and they talk about them, and then a few months or a few weeks later, lo and behold, pre-departure testing, rapid antigen testing, a special fund to pre-purchase the COVID treatments, that all starts to appear in the government's plans. Now, I have to say, we don't mind that. We don't mind that. We're good with that because we're here to act in New Zealand's national interests. And if we can help a government that doesn't have its own ideas, we're very good with that. We're fine by that. So feel free, as we propose, take good practical ideas that are in New Zealand's interest and get them done. I have to say, I think the government did a pretty good job in 2020 managing COVID, and I've said that publicly and I'll continue to say so. But I have to say, 2021 was a shambles. We had lots of time to see what was going on. We had first mover advantage, and we didn't get anything done on time. It was a total sort of look 1 or 2 days ahead, never have a plan, and just make it up as you go along. That was the story of 2021, and we ended up losing the plot pretty quickly. For most of the year, we had the slowest vaccine rollout of the developed world after being told we'd be in the front of the queue. And when Delta hit, we only had 20% of the eligible population were fully vaccinated. And so we had to go into that extended lockdown. And rather than delivering quickly on vaccines or rapid antigen tests and boosters, the government's response has relied on extending everyday restrictions to everyday life. Because there's been no plan, we need to be looking further ahead, and that's why we've been arguing for things like rapid antigen tests so that people can have them wherever they want them, they can take control, take personal responsibility and buy them from supermarkets and pharmacies. We want them to be available to everyone. Seniors, workers, kids in schools should all have the opportunity to get tested to help keep us all safe. But what did the government do? What did the government do? They banned them for no other reason than they were ideologically opposed to any non-government solution. They didn't work with community organisations. They didn't work with businesses. They don't believe, actually, that a government should work with business and community on some of our biggest challenges, which just speaks to the arrogance, the centralisation and control agenda, the we know best agenda that this government's running with. And it's only after opposition, it's only after challenge from the media that we see a government react and miraculously start finding large quantities of rapid antigen tests in a matter of days. But it could have been done 6 months earlier. Could have been done a lot sooner. Mr. Speaker, the National Party will continue to push the government to do better on COVID, and that's our job. But it's also our job to offer solutions to all the other long-term challenges New Zealand faces. And I have to say, we've got a lot of long-term challenges that we're not getting outcomes or results for. To rebuild our economy, we're going to need to rebuild our connections with the world. And that's 7.8 billion people sitting in 195 countries that we trade and do business with. And New Zealand has a very proud tradition of going out in the world and building business and building export businesses to do so. And we need to reclaim that confidence, that ambition, that aspiration that we seem to have lost. I want New Zealand to be world leading. I want New Zealand to realise its full potential on all levels. I want a place where good enough is not just good enough for us. National understands that the only sustainable way to lift incomes across the economy is for Kiwis to become more productive. Now, for too long, Kiwis have been of the mindset that they just need to get ahead by working longer hours. We're already some of the longest working people on planet Earth, but our incomes still lag behind. So we've got to boost productivity to realise our potential. We've got to work smarter, not harder. And National's going to do that by investing in education so the basics are taught brilliantly and our kids can go out in the world and realise their dream and actually access higher paying jobs. We'll do it by delivering the infrastructure we need to support growth. We'll do it by attracting the top talent here because we know when we do, they grow the pie for all of us. We'll do it by opening up New Zealand to the world. We'll do it by backing small business up and down the country, not just letting businesses suffer while the government overheats an economy. Mr. Speaker, I'd say expanding that economic pie is how we secure our future. It's actually, and today, the Prime Minister made a big deal about unemployment being low. And it's true, unemployment is low in this country. But that's what you get when you have unprecedented government spending and record low interest rates designed to stimulate the economy. The only two levers that this government and Grant Robertson's been capable of using. But that's what you get. And unfortunately, that's the same recipe that's pushing up inflation. That's the same recipe that I can tell you won't end well for us. And the real frustration with unemployment being so low is that this government has not been able to help Kiwis get off benefit and into work. There are almost 90,000 more people on a benefit today than when Labor first took office. 90,000 people. 1 in 9 Kiwis are currently dependent upon the state for an income. And it just begs the question, what is the government actually doing to support those on benefits into jobs? And even more concerning is the fact that Kiwis are spending longer on those benefits. 116,000 people now spend more than 1 year on a job seeker benefit. And that's an increase of 50,000 Kiwis since Labor were first elected. 50,000 people staying longer on a benefit for longer. And when we know, and on this side of the House, we know when someone's out of work for a long period of time, it is difficult for them to re-enter the workforce. But if you can't get people from welfare to work now, with all the vacancies, with all the labour shortages, with low levels of unemployment in this country, when will you be able to do it? And let's be honest, we think the Labor government has not only engineered a cost of living crisis, they've engineered a dependency crisis that is the exact opposite of kindness and compassion. They don't care that they've written off and consigned a whole bunch of New Zealanders to a life that's just slightly better than poverty and subsistence. They've decided in their heads, with all their lovely white-collar backgrounds as academics and professional career politicians and union organisers, that somewhere between where they are and where the other jobs are, there's a miraculous line that work below that level isn't worthwhile. And I can tell you right now, there is. People can never... We want people off welfare, getting into work, and we know why. Because when you get a job, when you get into work, you get a sense of self-worth. You get a sense of mastery. You get a sense that you're a feeling of control of your lives. Mr. Speaker, I have to say National is more aspirational for New Zealanders. We care deeply about all of this. We care deeply about New Zealanders. We don't want them consigned to forever to be on welfare. We want them in work. We think that's dignity. We think that's the pathway that they need. So, Mr. Speaker, New Zealand deserves better. New Zealand deserves a government that is forward-thinking. New Zealand deserves a government that's prepared to tackle the big issues. A government that doesn't simply just react to the latest headlines or put all its efforts into spinning the news cycle. A government that doesn't just throw money at a problem and then just walk away. A government that doesn't just... we want a government that restores our confidence, our ambition, our aspiration as a country that actually builds a society opportunity. And that's what we're going to do with a national government, Mr. Speaker, and that's what we're going to deliver for the people of New Zealand. Thank you.